Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku back with another video. And so today I want to with the whole thing coming down last Friday with Vince McMahon officially retiring, um leaving all extensively, as we found out. I think it was on Saturday. We found out that there was some allegations about Vince possibly actually paying off these women $12 million, roughly around, with actual company money, um, which is what led to the abrupt resignation or retirement um, of WWE altogether, which does include creative. Um, there was a memo that he is leaving from everything, and Triple H, as we all know tonight, officially took over as head of creative. Um, Ironically enough, it starts the Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Nick Khan era, since those are the three that are going to basically involve. Stephanie is the chairwoman. She's also co-CEO, and Nick Khan is the other co-CEO, but Stephanie is the chairwoman. So she is kind of the main boss in this equation at this point. So there's that. But the main topic of this video is basically what will be the legacy of Vince McMahon. A lot of people have been, kind of trying to discuss this, because of the controversy and whatnot, of his departure. And if you're, someone who watches wrestling pretty much most of the time, and are been invested for a long time, for a fact that if this shit hadn't happened, Vince McMahon would still be there. Vince McMahon was never going to leave his position unless he was forced into retirement, or unless he died, or passed away. He was never going to be forced to retire unless he was forced to retire, which was the case. But Vince McMahon was basically going to take WWE to the grave, if he could have. Now, people are saying that, oh, this is probably going to diminish, his legacy. No, it's not. Vince McMahon's legacy was already in controversial limbo, good and bad, before this was even a thing. Okay, before we even found out about this whole story. Vince, went up against the federal government due to steroids. He beat the federal government in that. You had the whole thing in '92, the controversial issues there. I won't get into those ones because they're very graphic. You guys can look that up yourself about the '92 controversy. The whole Benoit thing, the Montreal screw job, obviously the Monday Night Wars. Vince has been through it all. He's been through pretty much any controversy that a businessman can go through, including in wrestling. So, the way I see it, Vince McMahon's legacy is secured, no matter what he was going to do. And I don't think this really takes anything away from him. Now, granted, he could possibly be indicted by the federal government again. Federal government might take an interesting case in this, since they failed to get him last time. But most likely, nothing will come from it. But, we'll see. I mean, if you recently got caught up to the recent Vince McMahon appearance when the first allegations dropped about the whole thing in 2019 with the intern or with the paralegal or whatever. He went on SmackDown that night after he had stepped aside originally um, from his position as chairman of the board. He stepped aside and let Stephanie be the interim chairwoman, and he would still be head of creative, though, of booking the shows. Obviously, this was a temporary factor, and obviously a lot of things changed within the next couple of weeks. But nonetheless, up to that point, he was still doing stuff for the company, just not doing all the board stuff. He was still running the shows, basically, and was backstage. So, in light of everything that's going on with him, I do not think anything in terms of where he is going forward is going to change the legacy of Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon bought the WWE, or WWF as it was called at the time, from his father in 1982, Vince McMahon Sr., which at the time was just a local northeast territory, because this was during the territory eras, where you basically had your own territory in the United States that you would book shows in. WWE was the king of the Northeast. This is why they ran shows mostly in MSG. If you go back and you watch the old matches in WWE, most of them are in Madison Square Garden, because that's where WWE started. That was their birthplace, was Madison Square Garden, because it was the Northeast. Northeast, they ran shows in New York, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, around that whole New Jersey, all through that line. But once they got past the line in the United States, there would be other territories. Like there was territories in the South. There was Jim Crockett's. There was the Jim Crockett promotion, which Jim Crockett promotion ultimately eventually became WCW, by the way. Then there was AWA. AWA, they were more in the middle, states. But WWE was in the Northeast. And that's where they were before Vince McMahon bought that company. And that was in 1982. So he's had a 40-year run. He's had a 40-year run as the owner of the company, which is a long run for him. He grew this company. He, turned it into, a juggernaut. He was the first person to take a wrestling company and turn it national. And he gulped up all the territories, or most of them at the time, and, turned it into a phenomenon that was bad or worse, because there were a lot of people that didn't like that at the time. But I'm sure eventually someone would have eventually done it if Vince hadn't done it. So, that was bound to happen at some point if Vince hadn't done that. But, the cable deals, all that stuff, Vince, kind of went all along to do that stuff, and grow it, throughout the entire country rather than just a regional promotion. These are things that he did, and you can't ignore any of that without talking about Vince McMahon, because Vince McMahon did that. He grew it to heights that the wrestling business had never seen. Now, there's a lot of controversies, of course. Like I said, I mentioned a lot of the controversies he's had throughout his tenure as the owner. of WWE, including, of course, the um, him buying up the territories and then going national, but then also um, doing the way he per se changed wrestling into more of sports entertainment. Because believe it or not, and I know this is going to be hard to believe for some non-wrestling fans to believe, but at one point there were actually people that believed wrestling was real. It never was real; it was always predetermined. But there were people like prior to Vince owning the companies that believed it was real, because back in the day, during the territory eras of WWE, um, they actually had athletic commissions for every event. Like every wrestling event that was ran, no matter where it was in the country, you had to go through an athletic commission. If you go through the old matches, like for example, if you actually go through some of the older matches on the WWE Network, I'm not sure if they show. Well, it's on Peacock now, at least in the United States. But for anyone who's outside of the United States that's watching this video, if you go on the network, you'd be able to see a lot of the old matches. If you're on Peacock, I'm not exactly sure if they show a lot of the old matches now. But if you watch a lot of the old matches from like the early 1980s or the 70s, they'll talk about an athletic commission. As a matter of fact, there was actually a storyline that Bob Backlund had done while he was champion, where they actually said that the athletic commission would decide how the title match would be ran, because there was a controversial decision with him and Greg Valentine, where Backlund pinned him, but the referee believed Valentine pinned him. And so they said they had to run it through the athletic commission, because at the time, they actually had to run things legitimately through an athletic commission, to actually have wrestlers go through physicals and stuff like that. Obviously, this isn't stuff they do today anymore, because they don't have to anymore. And the reason why they don't have to do it anymore is because Vince McMahon actually admitted that wrestling was just was predetermined. He admitted that the stuff they do, is pre-decided. And because of that, they didn't have to use an athletic commission anymore. So that was another thing that Vince changed. He exposed the business. So like I said, there's a lot of things that people don't like about Vince. But there's a lot of things that people do like about Vince because of the way he changed the business and made it bigger than ever, with the way the money is being made now. Toy deals, for example. That stuff, the toy deals, the DVDs, all that stuff that they do now, all that stuff never happened before Vince. Okay? That was never, like, a thing before Vince McMahon. So Vince McMahon did change. He did change the business. He took the WWE and obviously made them a public company in mid-1999. I think a lot of people that are casual wrestling fans assume that they've been a public company for about only 10 years. That's not true. They've been a public company since mid-1999 in the Attitude Era, at the height of the Attitude Era. And Vince McMahon was at the helm of that. Technically, he's not been an owner since then, since they're a public company, but he does have provisions in there, so he can be the majority shareholder and voting power. That's why he still has that. He's still the majority shareholder despite retiring. So technically, he could come back tomorrow and be in charge of the operation again if he wanted to. Not saying he's gonna, but I'm just saying that he can. So that was what it was structured in. He went public because of what was going on in '97. Because in '97 they weren't doing so good. Business was down because the WCW was running wild on them with Hulk Hogan in the NWO. That's also what led to the Montreal Screwjob, because they were telling him when he was trying to go public in '97. They told him to get out of lucrative deals, because Vince couldn't compete with Ted Turner in the money that Ted Turner was like paying wrestlers, because he was a billionaire and Ted Turner could pay whatever he wanted. So Eric Bischoff, who was running WCW for Ted Turner, because Ted Turner didn't run it like Vince did, where he was an on-screen character and the actual owner. Ted Turner was just the owner, and he had other people run the WCW for him, and that's why Eric Bischoff was in charge of it. So obviously Turner had unlimited resources, because he was the owner of Time Warner Cable at the time, and all the other things, Turner Broadcasting and all that crap. That stuff is what led to him being a public company, and it got approved in finalized in late 1999, or mid 1999, but by that point WWE was destroying WCW by that point in the ratings, by the time they did become a public company. But it was much different in '97. But again, him being public ultimately hurt him, because that's how they found out about the money. If he had been a private company still, they wouldn't have been able to track it. So there is that as well. But I think Vince wasn't thinking that way, because I think Vince was thinking more of the lines that, they weren't going to catch me until, I probably died or whatever. I think that's what he was thinking, maybe, because he was going to be running that company until he died. He had no intentions of retiring. He retired because he was forced to. Okay? And he's probably never going to be allowed to come back because of this. Because the government's going to be on him, investigating him, like, pretty much forever at this point, unless they decide to charge him, which I don't think they're going to. But they might, because you got to remember, federal government lost to him in 94, I think it was. They lost to him in the federal government for the steroid trial. He was accused of, supplying steroids to his wrestlers. And he was found not guilty. Those were the allegations. He was found not guilty for that. And, Vince was always a fighter. He was always portrayed as a fighter. He never backed down from a fight. He never backed down from controversy. He always got in people's faces in interviews. He was always a tough guy. And he always did what he could. Even with the XFL. A lot of people don't realize that he wanted to keep that XFL thing going on for another couple of years, but, UPN wouldn't allow him to run the XFL on their channel. That's the only reason why he didn't continue the XFL after that first season in 2001, was because there was no TV deal. The NBC backed out. NBC backed out after 1 year, and UPN, the people that had SmackDown at the time, were not interested in it. They said they would only be interested if they take away an hour from SmackDown, which Vince wasn't going to do. So that's why the XFL didn't happen again. Vince, and that's why he wanted to do the XFL again, because he was pissed that it failed. It had rubbed off on him for all those years. And then, of course, COVID-19 happened 5 weeks into the first season. And now The Rock owns it, or co-owns it, with his ex-wife. So, he's had those and again, XFL was another controversy in itself. That football league, since we're mentioning the XFL, but again, he revolutionized the business. But I think especially the last 10 years or so, he's lost touch with what the audience wants, and the biggest disadvantage he has now is he can't control the audience anymore. That's the biggest loss he's had, is he can't control the audience anymore. And he knows that. Like, people will just say what they want. And, then he'll still be like Mr. McMahon and, push the other guy. Braun Strowman, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Braun Strowman could have been one of the biggest stars in the company. I'm being serious right now. He could have been the biggest star in the company had Vince embraced him. He was over like holy shit for 3 years. And they refused to put the world title on this guy because they kept jacking off to Roman Reigns, who was getting booed out of the building half the time. Or most of the time, actually, during that time period, because they kept wanting to make him the new John Cena. Braun Strowman could have been the biggest star they ever had, because he was over, he was freaking, like, he was crazy, and he was a muscle guy. He was a big muscle guy the way Vince envisions a wrestler. And they didn't want to push him. And these were the problems. And then, of course, what he did with CM Punk. CM Punk became a star on his own. And then they killed the Summer of Punk thing with Triple H, in September or whatever. Night of Champions with I was there for that in Buffalo. They did that stuff with Punk. And that ultimately, then of course, obviously they wouldn't let him do the main event of WrestleMania with Cena and Rock. It had to be Rock and Cena 2, twice in a lifetime, which was stupid. And that's probably why Punk left. If they had just given him that main event, Punk may have stuck around. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Punk doesn't quit. I mean, obviously, Punk did have the back issue. I believe he had a staph infection on his back or whatever, which was very serious. Maybe Punk does stick around had they not done that. There's a lot of things, Vince became his own worst enemy. He became his own worst enemy because the biggest problem was the last 10 years, Vince McMahon could not embrace the times that he was in. He could not embrace the social media era. And what I mean by that is with the audience. Audiences always bring cameras now, on their phones. They have videos and shit like that. He still treats it like it's the early 90s and the late 80s, where he can control the fans' reactions. This is the problem with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns was being presented as a babyface, a good guy, the new John Cena, and the fans didn't want that. The fans did not want that, and they booed him out of the building. Now they're finally making him a heel. I mean, they've made him a heel for the past 3 years, or past 2 years now, but that was mainly due to the COVID pandemic. It literally took a global pandemic for Vince McMahon to make Roman Reigns a heel. Okay? Vince just never wanted to own up to the fact that the past 10 years, these decisions just didn't work. And, obviously Daniel Bryan, that happened, the main event of WrestleMania, because Punk quit. But then, of course, Daniel got injured, but we all know he wouldn't have had the title that long. He was going to lose it at SummerSlam to Brock, as we all know, had he not gotten injured. Brock Lesnar. So, I mean, last 10 years, he's not embraced it. And, sometimes when owners get this old because Vince has no major competition. I mean, now he's kind of has AEW, as of 2019. But for the longest period of time, he never had major competition. Once WCW went under in 2001, he bought him. He's never had major competition. You had TNA for a little bit, but I never took them seriously as a serious threat. AEW has been presented way better than TNA has, even at their brightest moments. The thing is, and the advantages the WWE has because of their name recognition, is just, Vince became his own worst enemy. I believe he became his worst own enemy because there's no major competition. He didn't have to work hard enough compared to what he used to have to do when there was competition. He could just write a show, crinkle it up if he didn't like it, and then just do whatever he wanted because there was no pressure. There was no pressure on him to give an S-rank show. He didn't have to anymore. And that's where laziness comes in. That's where the laziness comes in, guys. Does this ruin his legacy? No. His legacy, like I said, I think Vince's legacy has already been set in stone before all this stuff happened. We all know what Vince is. We all know what Vince was. We all know what Vince will always be. He always will be known as the guy who took wrestling to new heights, in which we have never seen before. He made the WWE the NFL of wrestling. But he also changed the idea of wrestling because in WWE, they're sports entertainment. They're not professional wrestling. They're WWE superstars. They're not pro wrestlers, which they are. He changed those elements. And we might see a return to that, hopefully under Triple H, but we don't know. People still call them wrestlers. Audiences still call them wrestlers despite them always promoting them as superstars. They still call them wrestlers. Superstars. Well, the thing with superstars, here's the thing with superstars. The reason why, you want to know why he calls them superstars? Because he feels like sponsors like the word superstars better because it's not promoting violence. Like when you call someone a wrestler, it promotes violence. So calling them superstars makes it so they're not violent, even though they are by definition because they are like wrestling. But that's the only reason. Like if sponsors loved the word wrestling, that he wouldn't care. That's why he cares. Belt and titles. The reason why he won over with titles is because, a belt is, in a way, sort of a title as well. But, they are belts, but he doesn't like calling them belts. He likes calling them titles. I don't really care when it comes to that terminology because a belt and a title to me is the same. When you're winning a world championship belt, that is a title. Okay? But when you say a superstar, when you say a wrestler is a superstar, it makes no sense. Because you know what they are. They're wrestlers. All fans call them wrestlers. Despite them always being promoted as superstars. So there's that aspect to it. But, he'll always be known as Vince. He'll always be known as the guy who grew wrestling. He'll always be known as that no matter what was going to happen, whether he died next year or 2 years, 5 years from now, had he still been involved with the company. It would definitely have been that way. But, in terms of if he'll ever be on television again as an on-screen character, probably not. I would have liked to have seen him actually make one more appearance. I know he's been doing it frequently while he was under investigation before he retired, but I would have liked to have seen him get one more appearance for a proper send-off, but Maybe he gets a surprise appearance at SummerSlam. I don't know, but I think that should have happened. Will Vince be in the WWE Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Um, I don't know if he necessarily wants to be in the WWE Hall of Fame right now because, to my understanding, Vince doesn't want to take it away from the product, which is why he never would accept himself into the Hall of Fame. He never accepted himself into the Hall of Fame because he doesn't want to take it away from the other people that are there currently, especially while he's still working there. But maybe now next year he'll be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But you can't really talk about the history of WWE without Vince. Going to this new era, though, I am really intrigued to see what comes next. I'll be very interested to see what Triple H does because, obviously, with him being in charge of talent, as of tonight here in MSG on Raw, which is poetic because that is the birthplace of Monday Night Raw, is Madison Square Garden. We'll see what happens. I am looking forward to what happens with them, but in terms of Vince's legacy, his legacy will be fine. His legacy will be fine. Everyone knows. People, if Vince was to come out like tomorrow or something in an arena, if he came out on SummerSlam to, say goodbye to the fans or whatever, I guarantee you people will be cheering for him. Guarantee you people will be cheering for him, just like they did when he stepped aside as chairman when this whole thing started. People were still cheering for him. People were still going for the music. Vince is still well liked by the audience, despite all the good and the bad times that Vince has done, good or bad, to professional wrestling. People still cheer for him. So I think, like I said, I don't know if Vince will ever be back involving creative or anything like that again. Probably not, but his legacy, if this is it for good, I think his legacy is fine. He did become a hindrance for the past 10 plus years now, because of the way the era has been with WWE, with the new generation of wrestlers. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think Vince will be remembered fondly from a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people that were born have always known him as the owner, basically. I mean, I'm 30 years old. I was born in 91, okay? And he was the owner. So, I mean, he was the owner then. So, it's going to be adjustment for a lot of people, but I think it's a good thing. I think they're needed. I think the change is good, because I think you become your own worst enemy. I mean, I think Al Davis, the owner of the Raiders, his team sucked for the last decade of his life, and he was still the owner, but he wasn't really doing exactly good in drafting. He eventually unfortunately passed away, but in a way he was a hindrance to the team. I think Vince in a way became a hindrance to the product in the direction that they needed to go. So I think his legacy will be fine. I don't know when he'll be back, whether it be in the Hall of Fame next year or when he comes back in terms of an on-screen character or not. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about Vince? For me, obviously my favorite moments will always be the Stone Cold Steve Austin McMahon feud. Obviously, that is iconic. That was an iconic feud. I'll always remember the him in the hospital, and then Austin like impersonated a doctor or whatever and beat the crap out of him, hit him with a frying pan. Um, that was probably one of the favorite memories. I remember watching that live when that happened, and it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable when Austin was beating the crap out of him with that, and then used the freaking, the jolt or whatever. When you have a heart attack or whatever, use the jolt right on Vince, like, So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Comment, rate if you like this from my video or any other videos. Please subscribe. And that's about it, guys. I am the SS Ultimate Goku Moderator. Peace. You have no chance in hell.